I know teachers right now are into their 40s who are still paying college loans off.
The people that aren't in education complain about what we're not doing in education. You're like, all right, so the people that are doing cool stuff, you almost have borderline a moral obligation to say, all right, this is what I'm doing then.
Let me ask you a very quick question. Is it easier to get a passport than it is to substitute teach?
Yep. Like, be lazy. Well, if I'm training people to be teachers, be lazy. Yeah, shut up and let them do it.
There's two emotions that I straddle, right? Is hope and worry. So I'm worried to death about kids, but I'm super hopeful about the future.
Education wants the instant gratification. They want the weeds. They don't want the trees.
CTE is coming gangbusters for the traditional, practitioners who don't want to even entertain moving things around for the sake of efficacy.
Do we need as much time as we need to do school?
I mean, if you're asking a 14-year-old, they're going to tell you a weekend will be fine. But no, I want to challenge kids.
If you're about to listen to this podcast, buckle up.
You're listening to the Disrupt Education Podcast. Here are your hosts, Peter Hostrawser and Alli Dahl.
Welcome back to the Disrupt Education Podcast. I am Peter Hostrawser here with my co-host Alli Dahl. We got a great guest today, but before we jump into some amazing conversation, Alli, what's been happening? It's springtime is in full effect.
Full effect. We actually, I always like to give little behind the scenes. We haven't recorded in a hot minute or a little bit because we sometimes batch or we just kind of seasons odulate and we have stuff going on. And so we've actually been recording with other people, including our guests. So it feels like, okay, we are coming into this new season, even though this will come out a little bit later, but it's like, we just had daylight savings time. The sun is shining much later in the day. The birds are chirping. The trees are budding. I'm in Minnesota, so of course we're about to get snow again. But right now it's like 60 degrees and it's really nice. So it's just like I feel like we're kind of in this new little piece for the podcast. We really wanted to kind of talk about stuff me and you have kind of touched on, but we want to dive a little deeper. And we were on our guest's podcast, their podcast, and it was like, oh, we have to have them on ours. So a little preview.
Definitely want to connect with this person on LinkedIn, and that is Dan Thomas. A little bit about Dan. He's 30 plus years as a STEM educator. He's on a mission to help teachers reimagine learning through project-based learning, Lego integration, which we're going to get into, and AI-powered education. Huge in the areas of problem solving, critical thinking, creativity, and just making things happen. Never stopping. He's actively retiring. Dan, how you doing?
Wow, that sounds, I'm like, are you talking about me? No, I'm doing great. Like Alli said, I'm going to get Alli's weather. I'm in Western New York. I'm going to get Alli's weather the day after she gets it. So I think, today's 70 degrees. Monday's going to be like 40 in snow.
Yeah.
And that's going to go back up. But no, I'm living the dream. I love what I'm doing. Get to have some fun and enjoy myself.
Well, let's start there, like living the dream. How did you get to be living the dream in education, which a lot of people are a little bit down on teaching and such and all this stuff. But, right before we started recording, you were speaking about your school and it doesn't sound like you want to retire, right? But you've got a good thing going on. But that's educators like us in the podcast know that's something that's built. Like it's a mindset. But if you don't mind sharing kind of a background a little bit deeper than what I gave there.
Well, I'm in Jamestown, New York, and I teach at Southwestern Central School District, which is just outside of Jamestown, and we're in about an hour and a half south of Buffalo. So we're over on the western side of the state, stuff like that. Small school, actually the school I went to. So I graduated there in the late 1900s. And
now I feel old. Thanks.
And the joke is that they let me out for 5 years for good behavior. I've had one job, one career. I do all kinds of jobs in that career. I applied once. I got the job at my old school. I was literally out of work for a month because I graduated in December of 92 from college and started teaching February 1st. And my first day was a snow day.
Wow.
And yeah, so it was great. I've been there for over 32 years now. Seen a lot of changes. And like we were talking before, through my podcast and through social media, I got to meet a lot of people. I got to talk to a lot of people. And I realize that my school is really good in the fact that we don't have that teacher administration animosity. We don't have, if there's an issue, we sit down and we talk, right? We're adults and we sit down and we talk, and we don't have like, oh, I'm going to file a grievance. We don't do that stuff. We're a small school district. We got probably 1,200 kids, K to 12. So it's not a huge district, but we got support. We got great teachers in there. We got some pretty good students. And we got our challenges too. And like I tell people in our school, and I was actually talking to our new principal the other day about this. I'm like, if our biggest issue right now in Southwestern Middle School is cell phones and vaping, we got it pretty good.
Yep.
If that's our biggest issue, other than 12-year-old middle school students, right? Which they don't change. But I mean, really, I go to work. I got great people to work with. I don't have to worry about things. I hope for snow days. That's another benefit. We did have a few snow days this year, which was awesome. But no, it's a great facility, great support from superintendent right on down. It's awesome. And there's a tech job open there, by the way.
There we go.
There's a STEM job if somebody wants to come over.
Alli?
Hey, yeah, Western New York. There are some cool drop zones in Western New York that I have yet to jump at. But besides this awesome culture, right? You're in middle school STEM, and one of the things that when we were talking on your podcast and whatnot is you've kind of really dived into project-based learning, and you're a Lego educator, a Lego education teacher. I don't know the totally correct label, but how did you come up with that? Talk us through that. In itself I didn't have somebody gamifying with Legos in school, and why you think that's a really good fit for kids, and has it been your whole career? You know what I mean? Just kind of tell our listeners how that evolved and where it's at, and why you're so passionate about it.
Well, start with the project-based learning part. I've always done something like that, right? Even before it was kind of a buzzword or a thing, right? Because that's just the nature of what I do. I actually started teaching in the metal shop. So if you name anything in our STEM department, I've taught it. From metal shop to wood shop to drawing to computers to coding. I don't know whether I have ADHD or I just like to do a lot of different things, right? And I'm not making light of any of that, mind you, but it's just I got to change. I got to do something. So I've always had Lego robots in my classroom, coming up, and so during COVID, we got some monies to do some things. As everybody did. And my principal goes, hey, I got X number of dollars. I don't even remember what it was. I go, all right, I'm going to buy some Lego. So I went online and I bought just bulk Lego. I bought 50 pounds of it, right? From a company online, all cleaned and sanitized. And I put it in my classroom. And I'm like, well, now what can I do with this? So what I started to do with this is a lot of teachers do bell ringers. Right? You come in and you got to have something on the board or some worksheet or something to do. Well, you can do your administrative tasks. Take attendance, collect passes, maybe if you have enough time, go to the bathroom, right? All that kind of jazz. So I'm like, you know what? Kids sit there and they do things. We're going to do a Lego build. So I just would take plastic shoe boxes or whatever I had, and I'd scoop out some Lego and I put them on the desks, and we would do a 5-minute build. And that would be something like make a chicken, make a chair, make, whatever, and it could relate to whatever project we were doing. Make a bridge, make, a tree house, whatever. And like Halloween time, we do pumpkins and we do hearts at Valentine's Day, so we tie in all that stuff too. And the kids, what I found was that really got the kids ready to work in the classroom, because we have 80-minute blocks with middle schoolers.
Wow.
And 80-minute blocks with a 12-year-old after lunch is a lot. So we did that, and I'm like, okay. So I would rotate that in there. We would do, some random things like hang off the table. I used AI now to come up with some ideas because I get stuck. And the kids are just amazing at what they create. Like, I still have a bunch of them from years ago that are just, I never took apart, right? Most of them I take apart, but there's some you just can't, right? They're just awesome. Like, I have a giant duck that's sitting under my smart board. Just was perfect. And the kids put it there, and it just stayed there ever since. So we do that. And then sometimes it becomes a team build or a table build. So I might make it a 10-minute table build where they do something a little bit more involved. And what I found was behavior issues went down, engagement went up, and the kids were happy. I mean, and to me, a little bit too, because I love playing with Lego bricks, is the fact that the little bit of ASMR with the clicking and clacking of the bricks, there was giggling going on, there was conversations, because I could walk around and have what one of my podcast guests, Dan Jones, called micro conversations. In that, like, I could say, hey, Alli, how was that jump you did Saturday? Right. I could go into the kid. How was your baseball game? How was that band concert? How was your swim meet? How's your mom? Because a lot of my kids, I had their parents, because I've been there forever.
That's when you've been there for a while.
And I'm starting to get kids of kids of kids, which is tough.
Yeah.
But, so I found that you could make that connection with the kids by doing just something simple, something a little bit different. And you don't need Lego bricks to do it. You could do it with just regular office supplies. Give the kids the challenge and let them create. Because one of the things we learn as a Lego education trainer is that your hands know what they're doing, right? Sometimes your head gets in the way. And as adults, my head gets in the way a lot. I overthink the crap out of things, but I find that the kids just really, really get into it. And the kids that you don't think would be all in,
sure.
when the Lego bricks are out on the table, those high school kids get excited. Because they're kids, right? They're kids. So, so I started playing with those, and they're so versatile. Now, I'm in a STEM class, so we could build structures, we can build towers. But what if you're in English class? What if you're in a social studies class? Obviously, math class fits in very well, right? So I could throw them into my ELA teachers and say, hey, you could build something that represents part of a story. You could use the different colors of bricks to represent different parts of a sentence structure. I mean, obviously in math, you can do area and fractions and perimeter and all that kind of jazz. Sorting, right? One of the things that I taught the science teachers how to do was just dump a bunch of stuff on the table and tell the kids to sort it. Right? Yeah. Some might sort it by size, some might sort it by color, some might sort it by this, right? So now you get an idea, and just let the kids explore it a little bit. And that's what it's about, is getting the hands dirty, getting letting them play. And because that's hitting a lot of over 20 different cognitive skills in that little exercise with that 5-minute build. And a lot of and I've changed my vernacular on this. I used to call them soft skills, but now I'm calling them durable skills or workplace skills after listening to a few of your episodes.
Yep.
And a few other people. Those are the things, the communication, the collaboration, the problem solving, because you don't going to get all your materials. There's no recipe. There's no, hey, build it this way. So there's a lot of that just kind of sets the table for a successful classroom.
Yeah.
Mm.
I really love that with Lego bricks and making these things happen. Now, you wrote a very cool blog, and if anybody wants to go read your blog, it's on Coach ThomasTech.com. We'll put that in the notes. This one hit big time, like I think with a lot of people. I mean, you have great blogs, by the way. And this was on March 1st, and it was, Are we measuring student success the wrong way? Um, there were a lot of I'm guessing you got a lot of hits on this. And so, with what you just explained there, um, education, sometimes traditional education that we want to disrupt is very controlling, right?
Mm.
Sit down, sit and get, etc. The old Ford, get on the assembly line model, blah blah blah, right? And what you've described is amazing. I can see it. I can almost visualize it.
Mhm.
Um, how do you measure that then? So if we're talking about these, and definitely Allie and I know these skills, the durable skills, the workplace skills. As an intern coordinator, definitely we have kids do that. How do you get kids to unpack what they're learning while they're doing these these builds and such?
That's a great question. We have these conversations, and I go around the room like we'll do a round robin or some other cooperative learning strategy, and again, I was doing a lot of those before those things, before Kagan was big, and I'm sure they were out there before I was. Don't get me wrong, um, but I was always having these conversations with the kids. I always knew where they were because I could see them doing this stuff with their hands. And again, that's the nature of what I teach. Just the project-based stuff, everything is around an open-ended question. But what I found the best way with this is these kids don't know that they're doing this. They don't know that they're hitting these durable skills because you can't explicitly teach them.
Mhm.
I don't believe you can say, okay, today we're going to come into class and for the next 40 minutes, we're going to work on communication, right? How do you talk to people? Now, you might need to do a little bit of that, but you tell me the kids today don't know how to communicate, right? Sometimes it's us that's holding them back. The kids are all in a group chat, right? Back when we were kids, it was called waiting, or where everybody's bicycles were out in front of the house, right?
Yep.
So the kids are communicating. We just got to get them communicating with knowledge, with information that we're using. So the best learning, the best teaching goes when the kids don't understand their learning and when you can't find the teacher.
Hmm.
Hmm.
If my principal walks into my room and can't find me because they don't know who the teacher is, that is a win any day of the week.
Nice. Nice. Can't find me because I'm on a golf course, but that's another story. No,
Maybe.
maybe.
Soon
Yeah.
enough.
Oh
Yeah,
my,
totally visualizing this, Allie. What do you think?
I know. So for when we kind of talk about, you know, project-based learning or I know gamification of education, there people use buzzwords. And one thing that I really struggled with as kind of technology exploded, especially in the last 5 years, is, like how do we balance like the hands-on piece with, the desire for kids to be, technologically savvy and, we can gamify stuff so everything can be personalized and kids can go at their own speed, but at the cost of they're going to be potentially in front of a screen more. And what I'm seeing now, 5 years after the pandemic, and we, had this huge ramp up of technology and get all this software in and all this gaming and coding and everything. Now it's like I'm seeing the swing back to papers and pencils and get kids off the screen and everything. So I'm curious, like your approach seems very hands-on. I don't see you mentioning a lot of like on their tablets or on their device learning. I'm sure there is some of that, but like what's the balancing point? Because right, I don't know what the answer is, but I really struggled at the end of my career feeling like, man, I had too much kind of, I think, dopamine nuggets, maybe, like where the kids are just playing the game to like get to win, but maybe not understanding the concept. I don't know, like if you have that experience, or if you're just like, no, I prioritize the Lego bricks and other hands-on stuff based on what you've seen in 30 plus years of education. So what would you say to kind of like gamification and all that?
I don't do a lot of like gamification of things. Like we're gonna play a Kahoot, right? I do a little bit of that. I whatever insert ed tech tool here
Yep.
game. Uh, and I also don't use ed tech just because hey, we bought Magic School, which means we got to use Magic School all the time, or we bought Nearpod. We bought Nearpod, just after the
Mhm.
pandemic, which is a great platform. Don't get me wrong. But if every teacher does a Nearpod every day, it loses its emphasis.
Mhm.
Yep.
So you got to, I coached football for quite a few years at Southwestern. Um, I got to work with some amazing guys. Uh, and the one coach that I worked with, and I didn't realize it at the time, talked a lot about balance and balance on the field, balance off the field, balance in the game. And there was four pillars of balance, and I can't remember what they are off the top of my head because I'm thinking about it now. But everything in the classroom is about balance, right? Because I like to think about when I'm putting together a project or I'm doing something. What if Alli Dahl's in my class and Peter's in my class, and I'm going to sit there, I'm going to go, all right, they're coming from math, and they're probably sitting in cemetery rows, and they're sitting there, and the teacher's in the front of the room dispensing the knowledge, and they're doodling and whatever we did, right? They're just on their phones or whatever. We were doodling in that block S that everybody made back in the day. And I want to balance that. Like I'm like, they're kids. They got to get up and move around. They got to do something. Because I know for myself, I can't sit here for 8 hours a day or 6 hours a day. And I'm 55. I'll be 55 years old, right? I can't imagine a 12-year-old that's hyped up on sugar after lunch, which I see all the time. How are you going to control that kid? Right? So we we'll use the laptops. We have laptops in our school. But I'll balance it out. Like they got to have the tactile skills. And I go through this a lot too. On the other side of that, like we do a bridge project. We do the classic stick bridge
Mhm.
project, right? Every tech teacher, every STEM teacher in the history of STEM teachers has done the bridge project. You throw some weights on it. It looks
It's a
awesome when
great.
it falls, and the kids are all excited about that, right? And I'm like, 12-year-old kid probably can't graph the stress strain curve of a piece of balsa wood or know what the modulus of elasticity is and all that stuff, and nor do they care. They just want to step on it and watch it fall, right? They just want to break it.
Yep.
So I struggle with that. I'm like, why do we do that project then?
Hmm.
Why break the bridge and get that data that we can't do anything with because they just physically don't have the math skills. They just haven't learned those math skills yet. And then I think somebody goes, well, they need to find motor skills, right? And I've had this conversation before with administration too. Like I used to teach technical drawing, right? Board and T square. Get out the T square, the board, triangles, pencil, and the our curriculum person at the time goes, why do we do that? I'm like, do you teach a kindergartner to write before you put them on a computer? Do you teach an elementary kid how to write? I wish they'd bring back cursive or like penmanship at least. Holy crap. Uh, but you got to teach them the basics. So the kids need that tactile skill. They need that perseverance. They need that struggle. It's easy to make it on a computer, right? I can go on West Point Bridge Designer, make that same bridge on there, but you know what's going to happen? That kid's going to try and make the most expensive bridge possible. They're not going to try and make the most efficient bridge. They're going to try and make the most expensive bridge. Let them go, right? Let them do that. But they need some of those hands-on skills. They need to have those natural conversations. There's a big push a while back for teachers in New York State to have, as part of our annual performance review, have what were called natural conversations, where you just talk to your principal, right? Well, that's just being a person, first of all, right? I mean, that's just, if you're not talking to your principal, shame on you. And I got another story for that. But yeah, I mean, how do I balance it? I get them up out of their seats. Now I let them, Google anything they want. Google it away. They're like, we can Google it. I'm like, well, that's what you do when you die in Fortnite, right? You're playing Call of Duty and you Google how to play. I've watched you watch videos of kids playing video games. But yeah, we got to balance out the hands-on versus the at the computer, because I couldn't hack it. And that can happen in any classroom, right? It can happen in an ELA classroom. Write the essay, build the diorama, build something, do a project, act out something. I actually heard something on a podcast the other day where they were a social studies teacher printed out a giant Declaration of Independence, hung it on the front of the room, and the kids were researching facts about the Declaration of Independence. And when they got it was like a breakout room type of thing. And when they got done with whatever clue it was, they got to go sign the Declaration of Independence. You don't think they're going to remember the Declaration of Independence then versus, hey, we just took a 50-question multiple choice quiz on the Declaration of Independence. I have no idea what's on it. Right? So those are the things. Ask the kids what they remember.
Yeah.
Do they remember sitting at the computer for 6 hours a day, or do they remember that bridge that almost twisted Mr. Thomas's ankle because he was stepping on it? And that's what I used to do. I used to step on the bridge. And majority of them held.
Did you choose the squirrely ones and just step on theirs first? I mean, no, I'm just teasing.
I don't reveal my secrets. I'm like a magician.
So, yeah, this is amazing. And for those who are watching this, you all know, like, when Alli and I are looking down, we are taking notes like crazy. So I love this, Dan. One of the conversations that we've had on a previous podcast, and it's come up a few times. What are your thoughts on front end loading versus letting kids go all the time? It's another balance question, but it sounds to me, what I'm hearing you say is let them go, which I love. Let them kind of mess it up, get dirty with it, and then the conversation happens. But then there was also, when we got to, some of the basics, what does that look like in a middle school? That's kind of the first half of this kind of question is, what are your thoughts on front end loading everything for students versus just discovery? And then, like, well, we'll start there, but I'm thinking then where does, like, the basics start to trail off and the creativity kind of needs to continue going in your experience?
Great question. I don't think that you can front load too much with kids. And I learned this, a couple acronyms. I learned this from code.org when I did a training with them. And what they used to call it was ABC CBV. So it was activity before content and content before vocabulary. Right? So you want to do some type of, at least in my mind, some type of activity. And that could be a 40-minute activity. That could be a 5-minute Lego build. It could be, or somewhere in between, right? And I'm not saying for this, like take your lesson plans and throw them out, right? Tweak what you got. You got some good lesson plans, right? You got awesome lessons that you love to do. I'm sure, Alli, when you're in the classroom, You had your go-to lessons that you knew this one was gonna knock their socks off, so to speak. And so you got some awesome ones. But in my estimation and in my experience, you can't, if you front load that content in that vocabulary, it doesn't mean anything to the kids unless they've had experience with it. Right. So I was actually talking to a woman that was working at let's see, it's English, an indigenous school in Iowa, I want to say it was, Native Americans. And they were, as part of the, if you're it was an immersion school. So you know what that is, right? Where they speak the languages and all that kind of stuff, right? So they speak the native language. And I'm like, well, we're going to go on a field trip to the cornfields, and we're going to talk about corn and the power it has and all this other stuff with it. And I'm going to go over the vocabulary and the words when we get there. I'm like, don't do that in the space, because now they'll remember that stalk of corn that they picked the ear of corn off of the stalk, and they'll tie it to that. If you just do it in a classroom with a picture or something like that, they're not going to have any idea. Another example I use for that one too is, you take a seventh grader in a geometry class, right? They're doing shapes, they're doing area, they're doing volume, right? Great. Not hard tasks, right? We all do area, we all do volume, we all do that stuff, whatever. But that kid that's sitting in the back, not paying attention, has no interest in doing it. In 5-10 years, he's going to be at the end of your driveway when you ask him to pour your concrete driveway, or she, whatever it may be. And they're going to be able to stand at the end of your driveway and go, oh yeah, that's 30 by 40. We're going to go 10 inches deep. That's going to be 642 cubic yards. I'm making this stuff up. I'm not doing this math in my head. And it's going to cost, it's going to cost $3,500. Right. But you give that same 12-year-old kid that same problem, he has no desire to do it because it doesn't mean anything to him.
Yep.
There's no purpose. And that's why I love project-based learning, because there's meaning to the kid. And if the kid has no buy-in, especially today's kids, they need that little bit of the millennial kids and the kids that we see in our classroom now. They want and they crave that meaning to it. Whereas when I went to school, we did it because that's what we were supposed to do. We did the homework at the table because mom was yelling at us to do. And if you don't, you're going to go to bed and all you're going to eat is broccoli, right? Because that's what we did. That's how we were brought up, us Gen Xers. And the kids today aren't going to do that. And if they're not bought in, they're not going to do it. I don't know if that answered your question or not.
Yeah, no, yeah.
It definitely does. I was just tutoring a student today in chemistry. Chemistry, honestly, I feel like I had it so easy to connect subjects, whatever they were interested in, to chemistry. It's just everywhere. Science lends itself. But I feel like English teachers and math teachers and social studies teachers and art teachers and business teachers, they can do the exact same thing through their lens, right? And it was just fun because today a student was telling me, oh, what are you doing over spring break? Oh, I'm going spelunking. And I was like, oh, did you know all of the chemistry in the caves and what the rock, and I was like, this ties into exactly what you're doing right now in AP chemistry. And the kid was like, why have I never learned this?
Right.
Well, right, they're just doing all these formulas and stuff on the board, right? Area, volume, whatever it is, and there's no context for it. And we had Sandra Adams on the podcast earlier this year. She said exactly what you said with you cannot front load kids with vocabulary. And she's a literacy specialist. That's her background, is in that space. And so I was like, it affirmed everything that I had seen in my own practice. And it's good to know, even in the middle school, likely elementary school level, we can let kids go and play and discover and contextualize the learning after they've had the experience, after they've had an activity. Without it, it's just like catching, I don't know, little things in the wind. You're hoping on a very small chance that they're going to like catch it ahead of time. You're just dust,
Yeah,
not concrete stuff.
you're definitely playing the game of school at that point, because those kids are just gonna study enough to regurgitate it on the test on Friday, and then Monday morning they're gonna. That's why we reteach a lot.
Yeah.
But they don't remember those things. They remember the projects. They remember the stupid stuff, the fun
They
stuff.
do. I did the bridge project. I still remember it,
Yeah.
right? Like, like I remember all of the projects. Like if I sit down and really think hard about what I remember the most in school, it's always those like fun, silly projects, movement activities, things where I'm connecting my brain to my body and like the mechanics, especially as a young kid. We take that stuff for granted now, more, or it's easier to take it for granted because of the digital age that we're in. So it's good to hear that like we can emphasize, you know play and discovery and find the balance point in like learning, whether gamifying or letting kids go free and everything. I'm curious on your take, in your space. You have 30 years of experience. You've seen shifts and everything in education, and now you're actively retiring,
In
whatever
the
that
middle of
means.
it.
In the middle of
In
it.
the middle of it.
In the middle of it. Right. So like if I'm in your school district and what I'm like, whoa, Dan has all of this knowledge, all of these resources, all of this know-how. I would, it's like it's awful when teachers like you leave, because it's such a space that of wealth and of resources and knowledge that you just can't replicate. It took you all this time. So if you're gonna kind of give people like what's the biggest opportunities in education right now, like what are we missing, like what should we be focusing on that you've seen and kind of like you've grown into over your 30-year career that you feel really strongly about now, and you would be like, if I was going to continue teaching, I would absolutely still do this.
Well, let me answer that with a question for you guys. First of all, let's start there. Why do kids come to school?
Mostly because they have to.
I mean,
Yeah.
like right now it's the law, right? It's
mean,
until you're 16.
Some
Why
it
do-
is a safe space, some is a place where they eat.
Yeah.
But yeah, mostly
story.
because they have to.
Why do kids play sports? Why do kids join the band? Why do kids join the musical?
Because they
Why do
want
they do
to.
those things?
Because they want to.
That's where their friends are,
Bingo. Yeah.
right? Kids don't come to school to watch us work,
So
which a lot of teachers kind of, I got to go to work. They're going to watch me work, right? And I remember I was sitting on the pool deck where my daughter was swimming, and her coach, who was one of her coaches, was a special ed teacher. And he looks at me and he goes, because swimming is one of the most horrific sports to partake of, right? You're staring at a line at the bottom of the pool for 2 hours, 2.5 hours a day, swimming 6,000 yards. And oh my God, did my daughter eat me out of house and home. But she did the thing. More power to her. But swimming is terrible. And he looks at me and he goes, "Why are these kids in the pool?" And I'm like, "I don't know, because mom made them." Like same answers you did.
Mm-hmm.
They're here because that's where their friends are, right? Kids join the football team because that's where their friends are. On top of that, a lot of kids, it's again the only place where they can get 2 hot meals, the only place where they feel safe, which is sad if you knew some of the things about that. But they come to school every day because that's where their friends are,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's where the memories are made. So, what have I seen in education lately that's coming to that? You got to make the connections, and I think that's where having these open-ended up out of your seats. We're not sitting we're not going to interact if I'm standing at the front of the room and you're in your cemetery row taking notes. We're not. It's
Ooh,
not gonna happen.
cemetery row. I love that, by the way. Sorry, I had to
That's
throw
not
that
my
out.
own. I
I've
I
never
forgot
heard
where I
that.
heard that one from. But the seven worst words in education. We have always done it that way.
Yep.
Hmm.
The teachers that are teaching that way, and again, there is a need for that. I'm not saying that, you know, lecturing in PowerPoints are bad, right? Project-based learning, good, right? I'm not, again, it's all about that balance piece, right? So you got to have a little bit of that, but you're not going to make the connections unless you're having conversations, unless you're standing in the hallway during passing time. And my go-to right now with my kids is if they're walking past, I'm like, got any food? Got any food? Got any food? You got any Takis? Right? Because the middle schoolers got to have food, right? They're that's all they do is eat and sweat. The smell of a middle
Truly.
school classroom is amazing.
I can imagine.
So again, the kids aren't going to care about you and what you're teaching unless they know that you have at least some interest in them.
Yeah. Yes.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, it's those tough students that they're craving that attention. And in my estimation, in my experience, in my limited, student interactions in my school, the kids I think are craving that accountability piece.
Hmm.
When I was a kid, my mom stayed at home. I got home. When dad got home, he made his Manhattan. We had dinner at 5:30. He was watching Archie Bunker at 7, and whatever it was that was on TV. And I was the channel changer. I was the remote control, right? We got kicked out of the house at dawn and back in when the street lights came on. All that kind of, I wouldn't let my kids do that nowadays. But at any rate, there's no accountability that I had growing up with a lot of our kids, right? And I think they're craving that. They don't need a friend. They need a friend, but they need a friend that's going to hold their feet to the fire.
Hmm.
And I think that if you can do that and have some fun doing that, right, and all that kind of stuff, they're people. We're people above everything else, right? And I think that's where kind of education gets the bad rap a little bit, in that there are people in their room. We all heard hey, I'm teaching in my silos, right? The science teacher goes in his room and does his thing or her thing. Nobody talks to them, especially in a small district like mine. We got one physics teacher, we got one chemistry teacher, we got one earth science teacher, one statistics teacher, whatever it is, you name it.
Mhm.
We got one because of just that's what we got. So you get siloed and you forget, and we spend so much time with the kids during the day that we forget their kids, right? And their kids, and they want some accountability, and they want that. And even the ones that are jerks, I think, want it more because they don't have it. And sometimes you just need to, and I have a hard time with this sometimes, but just got to put the arm around the kid and say it's going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're going to turn out okay.
Yeah. 30 years of education plus, and you're a rarity. I love it. I honestly, I've been in education for 23 years. And it sometimes you feel alone when you're still driving and having fun when you get to this age, man. And I just love the fact that you do make connections. It's not rocket science, even though I got two science teachers next to me here on the podcast. Um, and it's all about that connection. I couldn't agree with you more. I've had I, hundreds of stories, as you probably do, where you have students who are just the system doesn't work for them, but you just have those conversations and you can just see that switch on. And I think that, educators who are going to make it are going to live by that,
Mm.
that feeling and that giving. And I just want to commend you, Dan, because and going back to kind of, Allie, you asked the question about all the resources. You have a ton of resources that you've put out there. I'm going to guess after you're done retiring and you go into something else, there's going to be even more. Somebody's going to be lucky enough to snatch you up and compensate you for your knowledge and your expertise along the way as well. But you do have the Tech Ed Clubhouse podcast, a lot of great conversations. I have recently, since been on your podcast, been going through your blog at CoachThomasTech.com. You do a lot of writing, you do a lot of posting. I know I gave two places, but where can people basically catch up with you the most and connect with you?
I don't know.
On the
LinkedIn
golf
has been,
course, outside of the golf course, I should
you
say.
know, LinkedIn for some reason lately has been amazing for educators.
Yeah.
It seems like since like January time, maybe even a little bit longer, there's a lot of educators and a lot of awesome stuff going on over there.
Hmm.
So I'm there. I'm there, active there. That's where I post a lot of my blog stuff. First, I'm on all the social medias at Coach Thomas Tech. One of my claims to fame, I guess, for lack of a better term, is my daily selfie with the dad joke.
Yep.
Been doing that. It comes up in my memories 5 or 6 years. I can't believe I've been doing it for that long. And they're school appropriate, right?
Hmm.
So a lot of people I talk to use them, use those jokes on their morning slide decks and stuff like that when they start their classes. So I'm on all the socials, Blue Sky, Twitter. I'm going to call it Twitter. There's X, Twix, whatever you want to call that mess.
Hmm.
Instagram. But I'm most active on Twitter and on LinkedIn. And then just email me, CoachThomasTech@gmail, is how you can get a hold of me there, and head over to my website. There's going to be some offerings coming up. Love to be able to, shameless plug here, on the podcast. Love to be able to come to your school and show you guys how to incorporate all this kind of stuff, because we just really just scratched the surface of a lot of what I do.
Yep.
This could have been 2, 3, 4, 10-hour podcast, like the SS Minnow and Gilligan's Island, again dating myself there. But yeah, reach out. Always willing to jump on a call with somebody, because I always learn something.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Selfishly, I learn something from everything.
Love that. Love that. Couple of final thoughts, Allie.
I think this will come through very clearly on this episode. And I love that you took your passions with Lego bricks and building and your expertise, and you found a way to make it like really accessible for students. And I think that is we always say that we find like all these little gems of ways to disrupt education, and it's these seemingly small things that can just open up the doors to a classroom and totally transform it. And I really love the tactile piece. I'm a big proponent of that personally, with kids developing the motor skills. And I think that teachers and educators listening to this, it's like you have your own interests, and there are ways to bring that into the classroom. And that's, I think, really where you can disrupt education. It's like, don't be afraid to connect with things you love, and it's likely related to what you're already doing. And I think it's going to open up more conversations like you talked about, and then you'll be able to hold kids accountable. So I love all of that. And I think it's just a really good reminder for our listeners to kind of bring that to their space and have more fun. I heard that loud and clear, and I think this is a perfect time of year for people to hear that, because it's towards the end of the year and they might be feeling like, oh, I have to do all this testing or all this stuff. I can't do anything fun. And I think that's the exact opposite approach that we should be taking.
100%.
I think Dan just gave him permission. Go ahead. Make it
Yes.
happen.
Yeah. I'm married. I don't get to.
So, Dan, I want to thank you so much. This again has been the tip of the iceberg. This is what Alli and I like to call the master class with no paywall. I mean, if you want to connect, please reach out to Dan. Again, we'll put all of his connections in the notes of the podcast, and that's really what we're all about, is just disrupting education. What can we do that's best for the community, for educators, and most importantly for our learners. So love what you do, and we'll put those out there. But thank you so much for taking the time today to have a conversation with us on the Disrupt Education podcast.
Oh, it's totally my pleasure. Thank you very much, both of you too.
And so with that, for Alli Dahl, I'm Peter Hostrawser. Thank you all for hanging out with us. Till next time, keep disrupting education. That's a wrap on this episode of the Disrupt Education podcast. Let's keep the momentum going. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share this episode out.
If you want to dive deeper into disrupting education, visit our website at disrupteducationpodcast.com.
Here's the bottom line. We believe real change in education starts locally. It happens when communities come together to rethink learning. If you're an educator, school leader, or organization looking to take action towards real change in education, we are here to help. Reach out and connect.
And we'd love to hear your thoughts on today's episode. So drop us a line wherever you listen. And until next time, take that bold step beyond your comfort zone. Challenge the status quo and be the change education truly needs.
Because at the end of the day, education isn't just about subjects. It's about students. And when we dare to disrupt, the future of learning is waiting.